ಬಿಕ್ಕರಾಗಿ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಮಳೆ ಒಳಗಡೆನೂ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಮೇಲೆಂದು ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಕೆಳಗಡೆಯಿಂದ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ತುಂಬಾ ನೀರ್ ಐತಲ್ಲ, ಈ ನೀರೆಲ್ಲ ಬಂದು ಮನೆ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಈ ನೀರು ಎತ್ತಾಕಕ್ಕೆ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ನಾವು ಕೆಲ್ಸಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಸಂಪಾದನೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದು ಮಕ್ಳಿಗೆ ಹಾಕೋದು.
In terms of the policy directions that we need, infrastructure itself has to talk to the poor more.
So the majority of people are priced out of housing itself. Every advertisement for housing in the newspaper today says starting at 1.85 crores. We should be ashamed to carry those advertisements in our papers. I would say the first thing we have to tackle about housing.
Namaskara, Bengaluru. Welcome to the Climate Charche podcast. This is a growing city, one of the fastest in India. We have seen it grow from a slow, retired, small community-based metropolis to a huge, vibrant global city, 14.5 million people and counting. The city has gone through a small restructuring with a new form of governance called the Greater Bangalore Authority, which now has 5 corporations. Things are changing and changing fast. The city is also being affected by climate change. Rainfall patterns are changing and are varied. We go through long periods of drought and then we are hit by floods. Housing in the city is a complex game. There is A khata, B khata, E khata. We have apartments, gated communities, we have sites, we have plotted development, and we have the BDA developing layouts all across the city and its periphery. But accessing housing, especially for the poor and for the informal sector, remains a challenge. In an era of climate change, where temperatures are going up, where rainfall patterns are changing, let's try and understand what housing stock has to do to be able to cope with climate change and to help residents lead a better life. We have with us two people who are extremely experienced in the sector. Nam jote idare Indira avaru. She's a second generation race speaker from Bengaluru. Hasiru dala jote seridira ನೀವು.
ಹೌದು.
ಕಾಲೋನಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತೀರಾ. 30 ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಕಾಲ ನೀವು ಈ ಕೆಲಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ. ಅದ್ರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ನೀವು ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಅಡ್ವೊಕೇಸಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಜೊತೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, ಕಾರ್ಡ್ಗಳು ತಗೋತೀರಾ, ಆ ಥರ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೆಲಸಗಳು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ. ನಿಮ್ದು ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಒಂದು ಅನುಭವ ಇದೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು, ಮತ್ತೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬದಲಾವಣೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ನೋಡಿರ್ಬೇಕು. ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆ ಅಶ್ವಿನ್ ಮಹೇಶ್ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. He's a climate scientist, social entrepreneur, and founder of various initiatives, Livable Accelerator being one of the latest, Lithium, Map Unity, India Together, you name it. Ashwin has been part of the governance dialogue in the city for a long time, as far as I can remember, Ashwin. His work focuses on accelerating sustainable solutions, fostering collaboration between state, market, and society, the Samaj Sarkar Bazaar, and strengthening local community-led resilience in Bangalore. And his particular attention at this point of time is looking at neighborhood. He's very excited about the 5 corporations and the scale that it gives for us to start to engage with it in a more meaningful fashion as citizens and communities to better understand data and to better improve our conditions. Welcome, Ashwin. Namaskara. Indira avare. Santosha. So, Indira avare, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡೋಣ. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನೆ ಇದೆ, ಓಲ್ಡ್ ಸಿಮೆಂಟ್ ಹಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಕರಿತಾ ಇದ್ವಿ, ಓಲ್ಡ್ ಸಿಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಾಲೋನಿ ಅಂತ ಇದೆ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸುತ್ತಮುತ್ತ ಇರೋದು ಒಂದು ಲೋ ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಭಾಗ, ಸ್ಲಮ್ಗಳು ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಇತ್ತು, ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಇಂಪ್ರೂವ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಚೂರು ಮಟ್ಟಕ್ಕೆ. ಆದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ತೊಂದರೆಗಳಿದೆ. ನೀವು ಎಲ್ಲಿರ್ತೀರ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ, ಏನೇನು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಸ್ಗಳು ಬರುತ್ತೆ ನಿಮಗೆ? ಅದು ಅಲ್ಲದೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಳೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಬಿಸಿಲು ಸೆಕೆ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅನುಭವದಲ್ಲಿ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ವಾಸವಾದ ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಏನ್ ಅನುಭವ ಆಗಿದೆ ಈ ಹವಾಮಾನ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಯಿಂದ?
ಹವಾಮಾನ ಬದಲಾವಣೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಬಂದು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಈಚೆ ಬಾತ್ರೂಮ್ ಕಲೆಕ್ಷನು, ಮೋರಿ ಕಲೆಕ್ಷನು, ನೀರು ಕಲೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಂದಿಗೆ ಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಬರೋದು, ಮೋರಿ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಹೋಗೋದು. ಅದು ಇವಾಗ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂಚೂರು ಬದಲಾವಣೆ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಬಾತ್ರೂಮ್ದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸೈಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ನೀರ್ದು ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸೈಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದು ಇದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಈ ಮಳೆ ನೀರು ತುಂಬಾ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಪವರ್ ಆಗಿ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಆ ಪೈಪ್ ಒಡೆದೋಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, ಮೂರು ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಸೇರಿಸ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ.
ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕುಡಿಯೋ ನೀರಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ತರ
ಕುಡಿಯೋ
ನೀರು
ನೀರಲ್ಲಿ,
ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ನೀವು ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಮಾತು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರಿ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಒಳಚರಂಡಿ ರಾಜಕಾಲುವೆ ಜೊತೆ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡು ನೀರ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕಪ್ ಆಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ.
ಹೌದು, ಇವಾಗ ಈ ನೀರು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಇವಾಗ ತುಂಬಾ ಹೆವಿ ನೀರು ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಸೇರಿ ರಿಟರ್ನ್ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಇಷ್ಟಿಷ್ಟು ನೀರು ತುಂಬಿಕೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತೆ, ಆಚೆ ಹೋಗಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ, ಒಳಗಡೆ ಬರಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಆ ಥರ ನೀರು ತುಂಬಿಕೊಂಡು ಏನಾಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, ಮನೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ನೀರು ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಪಾತ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ
ತೇಲತ್ತೆ,
ಹಿಂಗ ಅಲ್ಲಾಡ್ಸ್ಕೊಂಡಿರುತ್ತೆ ಮನೆ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಬಿಟ್ಟು.
ಎಷ್ಟು ದಿವಸ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಈ ನೀರು?
ಈ ನೀರು ಆ ಮೋರಿ ಹೆಂಗು ರಾಜಕಾಲುವೆ ಐತಲ್ಲ ದೊಡ್ಡದು, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನೀರು ಒಳಗಡೆ ಹೋಗಿದ್ರೆ ಅವಾಗ ಇದು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆದ್ರೆ, ಇದು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆದ್ರೂ ಈ ಮೋರಿ ನೀರು ಐತಲ್ಲ ಅದು ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಮಳೆ ನಿಂತ್ರು ಈ ಮೋರಿ ನೀರು ಮನೆ ಒಳಗಡೆನೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಒಂದೇ ವಾಸನೆ
ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ನೀವು 30 ವರ್ಷದ ಹಿಂದೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ಶೀಟ್ ಮನೆ ಇತ್ತ, ತಾರ್ಸಿ ಮನೆ ಆಗಿದೆಯಾ ಈಗ?
ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಟಾರ್ಪಲ್ ಮನೆ,
ಮನೆ,
ಓಡ್ ಮನೆ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದು. ಅದು ತುಂಬಾ ಮಳೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಗಾಳಿಗೆ ತಾರ್ಪಲ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೊಂಟೋಗೋದು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ, ಸೀಟ್ ಹಾಕಿದೀವಿ. ಸೀಟ್ ಹಾಕಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಈ ಮಳೆಗೆ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, ಸೀಟ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಂಥರ ಕ್ರಾಕ್ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಕ್ರಾಕ್ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಮಳೆ ಒಳಗಡೆನೂ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಮೇಲೆಂದು ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಕೆಳಗಡೆಯಿಂದ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ತುಂಬಾ ನೀರ್ ಐತಲ್ಲ, ಮನೆಗೆ ಹಂಗೆ ಊದ್ ತರ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ.
ಈಗಿನ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಳೆನೂ ಕೂಡ ಫಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಮೊದಲಿಗೆ ಕಂಪೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ. ಸೊ ಈಗ ತಾರ್ಸಿ ಮನೆ ಆಗಿದ್ಯಾ?
ಇವಾಗ ಸೀಟ್ ಮನೆನೇ ಐತೆ ನಮ್ದು. ಆ ಮನೆಯಿಂದ ಮೇಲಿಂದ ನೀರ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಹಸಿರುದಲದಿಂದ ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಮನೆಗಳಿಗೆ ತಾರ್ಪಲ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ರು. ಇವಾಗ ಆ ತಾರ್ಪಲ್ ಹಾಕಿದೀವಿ. ಈ ನೀರ್ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಊಟ ಕೂಡ ತಿನ್ನಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ, ಒಂದ್ ಕೆಲ್ಸಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಈ ನೀರೆಲ್ಲ ಬಂದು ಮನೆ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಡೆಂಗು ಜ್ವರ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮೋರಿ ತುಂಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಈ ನೀರೆಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಗೆ ರಿಟರ್ನ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, ವಾಂತಿ ಭೇದಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ, ದೊಡ್ಡವರಿಗೆ. ನಮ್ಗೆ ತಲೆನೋವು, ಜ್ವರ, ಕಾಲ್ರ, ಮಲೇರಿಯಾ ಇಂಥ ಕಾಯಿಲೆ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತು. ಈ ನೀರು ಹಾಕಕ್ಕೆ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ, ನಾವು ಕೆಲ್ಸಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಸಂಪಾದನೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದು ಮಕ್ಳಿಗೆ ಹಾಕೋದು.
Ashwin, this is a reflection of the lived reality of much of our informal settlements who occupy very vulnerable spots.
Sure.
And she's been a resident for 30 years. Indira has been a resident.
I know
for 30
the area.
Years. You know the area well. But Ashwin, there's also been a lesson here. At one point of time, under OSAID assistance, a pro-poor policy was tried out for water supply connections. And Indira Amma will bear us out that every house got a household connection and a meter. ನೀರಿನ ಕನೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಸಿಕ್ತು 30 ವರ್ಷದ ಹಿಂದೆ OSAID. ಮತ್ತೆ ಒಂದು ಮೀಟರ್ ಕೂಡ ಈಗ ಹಾಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಬಾತ್ರೂಮ್ ಕೂಡ ರಿಪೇರಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಆಗಿನ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ. ಸ್ಯಾನಿಟೇಷನ್ ಕನೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಸಿಕ್ತು. ಇಟ್ ಲೆಡ್ ಟು ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ the BWSSB adopting the pro-poor policy, which said that 0 to 150 square feet house can get a free connection, and 150 to 600 square feet have to pay only 25% of the connection. So there was some form of policy response to a felt need of water shortage and sanitation. Now, in the era of climate change, as we see our stormwater drains getting overwhelmed and the problems that she highlighted, how do you think that the city should move with respect to the stock which we have, as well as for the new stock that we are going to create? Your thoughts on that?
See, people like
Indra
are caught at the intersection of 4 or 5 different things. Think of weather and climate separately initially.
Right.
It rains. Sometimes, even in normal years, even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, every once in a while it could have rained a little bit more than, and some years it will rain a little bit less. Weather is variable. Climate is also varying, but not on the same time scales. And maybe the intensities are greater, the volumes are greater, and all of that stuff. The third is the infrastructure. There is something, around the way the house is constructed, the where it is constructed, the public infrastructure around the house, all those kinds of things. And the last thing, which is, you sort of hinted at it, is the adequacy of the space that she has. Now, in most cities, everywhere in the world, including in India, there is a notion of what is a quote-unquote legal dwelling.
Right.
It used to be 220 square feet or some such thing. It could, and that's why they had to make policies that say even a 150 square foot house can get a connection and all that, because until then you needed to have at least 250 square foot to have a legal connection. And where is that number coming from? It says for basic human dignity, every family needs a minimum of space in which they can live. And rightly or wrongly, that number is put at some number. But that assumes that you have provided that number to every family. Every day, 1,000 people come to Bangalore.
Right.
Every day, right? Which means 300,000 people a year. And if you assume that even 30% of them need housing support, 100,000 people each year need housing support. We are nowhere close to creating enough housing units to meet this rising requirement. Just the rising requirement, let alone the backlog that has happened. So what actually happens in buildings that exist? On the mane irate, people are living there, 4 jana iddare. But supposedly, in theory, one family lives over here. But in practice, because you have not created adequate housing supply, actually more family will be living in that house, even though you think only one family should live in that house. On top of it, occasional weather patterns can put you into distress. And climate change, which is making those intense weather patterns more frequent, is adding to all of these kinds of things. Now, the problem, if you look at it from sort of all the governance landscape, as it were, is it's not clear who is in charge of this thing.
Right.
BBNಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, every once in a while ಒಂದು ಹೊಸದಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ಲೇಔಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. If you look at their 4.1 notification or the 6.1 notification, the 4.1 especially, what does it say? Land for housing is urgently needed, because you are applying eminent domain to acquire land for housing.
Correct.
If land for housing is urgently needed at the time of acquisition, why is it that Arkavati layout is half empty 20 years later? Why is it that 6th phase in Banshankari is half empty 20 years after you acquired and so-called developed it? And why is it, most importantly, that while you keep saying that land for housing is needed, all the new things that have come up have substantially been in areas that you have not notified for development? You look at Shivaramakaran, Kempegoda layout, Solur Township, Bidadi Township, all these things in the west, southwest, and all of these things that were notified by the government. Your intention was that new housing would come up there and this land was needed for housing. Where did the housing actually come up? North, northeast, east, southeast. This is where the housing actually came up in the city. The center of gravity of the city is actually shifting because of all of these kinds of things. But today, if you want to have even a modest house in the city, you would need at least 60 lakhs. Therefore, this idea that people can each come and request the authorities to give them permission to build a house in their own property, it's a joke. Because 70-80% of the people don't have any property in which they can build, kind of thing. So the majority of people are priced out of housing itself. So, and that's another problem. Because they're priced out of housing, they have to crowd into whatever it is that is affordable at multiple times the scale of what is thought to be legal. I would say the first thing we have to tackle about housing is adequacy and universal dignified life for everyone in Bengaluru.
ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಜನಗಳಿಗೆ ಜಮೀನ್ ಸಿಗಲ್ಲ, ನಾವು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಕಟ್ತಾ ಇದೀವೋ ಮನೆಗಳು ಅದು ಸಾಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿಗೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, 1000 ಜನ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಪ್ರತಿ ದಿವಸ ಅಂತ. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅನುಭವದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೊಸಬ್ರು ಯಾರು ಬರ್ತಾರೋ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿಗೆ, ನೀವೇನ್ ನೋಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಹೇಗ್ ಮನೆ ಕಟ್ತಾರೆ ಅವರು?
ಇವಾಗ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಹುಟ್ಟಿ ಬೆಳೆದಿರೋರು ಕೂಡ ಅಷ್ಟು ಮನೆ ಕಟ್ಟಲ್ಲ. ಅಷ್ಟು ನೀಟು, ಅಷ್ಟು ಡಿಸೈನು ಎಲ್ಲ ಬಂದು ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಹುಟ್ಟಿ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಬೆಳೆದಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಆ ಸಿಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಾಲೋನಿಯಲ್ಲೇ ಹುಟ್ಟಿ ಬೆಳೆದು ನನಗೆ ಮದುವೆ ಆ ಏರಿಯಾದಲ್ಲೇ ಆಗಿ ನನಗೆ 4 ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಆಗಿರೋದು ಅದೇ ಏರಿಯಾ. ನಾನು ಆವಾಗ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಇವತ್ತು ಆ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲೇ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಇದೇ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಬಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕಂಪ್ನಿ, ದೊಡ್ಡ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮಾಲು, ದೊಡ್ಡ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮನೆ ಕಣ್ಣು ಹಿಂಗೆ ನೋಡೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ ಅಂಥ ಮನೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಟ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಸಪೋರ್ಟ್ ಕೊಡುತ್ತೆ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಅವರು ದೊಡ್ಡ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಹಣ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಕೈಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊಡೋಕೆ ಹಣ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಮ್ಮ ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಲೆಟ್ರು ಬರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಿ ನಾವು ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟರು ನಮ್ಮ ಲೆಟ್ರು ಬೆಲೆ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಈಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು ಹಿಂಗೆ ಈಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ, ನಾವು ಹೋದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಬಿಸಾಕ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವೇನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ನಾವು ಹೋದರೆ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಒಳಗಡೆ ಬಿಡಲ್ಲ. ನಾವು ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಹೌಸಿಂಗ್ ಕೂಡ ಇವಾಗ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಥರ NGO ಇಂದ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ನೋಡು, ಆವಾಗ ನಮಗೆ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಆವಾಗ ಈ ಲೆಟ್ರ್ ನಾವು ಹಿಂಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಈಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಈ ಲೆಟ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರು ಬರೀತಾರೆ, ನಾವು ಹೇಳೋದು ನಮಗೆ ಬರೆದು ತಗೊಂಡು ಹೋಗೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ.
She's making an important point. The deficit is not in housing.
Yes.
The deficit is in dignity.
Exactly.
You have to look at, say, this is my person. This is my fellow Bengalurian. She has been born here. She's lived here all her life. She's got family here. She's got all kinds of roots. And we look at a person like that, and if we are not able to see the humanity of that person and say it is the responsibility of other citizens and the responsibility of the government, what any sensible city would do, they would say, well, 30% of the people have high amount of money. So 30% of the land and the housing stock is for them. 40-50% of the people have modest means. So 40% of the land and the housing stock is for them. And 30% of the people are absolutely poor. So 30% of the land and the housing stock is for them. Unless you follow the curve, the distribution of actual incomes in the city, and if your approvals don't follow that distribution, you're always going to have a situation where you have 3 poor people, 4 middle-income people, and 3 rich people, but you have houses for 9 rich people and 1 middle-income person, and everybody else is left watching.
Exactly. The need for a land bank for the shelterless or for those who are marginalized has been an issue which has been much discussed and debated in India since the 80s that I know of, or even earlier. How do we create the architecture of governance to be able to achieve this kind of a balance and distribution?
What I would say is, you start with the existing system. You say, I'm BA or BBMP. People are submitting building plan approvals. I will only say, I will only approve in this proportion. If you do that, what will happen? Builders will come to you and say, come on, at this price of land, it's ridiculous for us to be able to build on top of it and sell to people who don't have the means to pay a lot of money. You see, every advertisement for housing in the newspaper today says, starting at 1.85 crores. We should be ashamed to carry those advertisements in our papers, right? What percentage of the people can afford to buy homes starting at 1.7 crores or 1.5 crores? It's ridiculous, right? It's almost as if that is the only target segment that we are even looking at. But if you start approving the building plan applications the right process, you will get demand from the builders saying the price of land is too high. Then you can look at what to do about the price of land. You can say, well, there won't be land purchase. There will be only land lease. There will need to be rental housing. We have no rental housing. You go to so many Indian students go abroad. Where do they stay? In rental communities. Because it's the easiest thing in the world to go to London, Manchester, New York, wherever the heck it is, and find a rental community in which you can rent. We don't have any rental housing. Rental has been left completely to the discretion of owners.
Sure. So, Ashwin, let me just sort of ask you a side question to this. One of the ways that the poor or the marginalized could access land was the so-called revenue side, right? The illegality of it gave them some access to a particular piece of land, badly serviced in terms of infrastructure, and the only route was to legalize it, the akrama sakrama.
Correct. Yeah.
And you had a stance on that.
Yeah.
Right? But this was the informality becoming formal in a very mixed up sense. In the city, they were a section of the economic ladder whose only means of access was a 15 by 20 site, which the formal system would not deliver, but these revenue sites would deliver, right? So how do you then handle this illegality to legality transformation, the informality to formality movement?
If you have provided an adequate supply of housing for people to live dignified lives in legal ways, then you can say anybody that doesn't live in a building that meets this standard is illegal.
I'll just draw her also into this conversation. ಈಗ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಯದು ನೀವು ಆಚೆ ಕಡೆ ನೀವು ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ರೆವೆನ್ಯೂ ಸೈಟ್ಗಳನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನೋಡ್ತೀರಾ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಸುಮಾರು ಸುತ್ತಮುತ್ತ ಇಡೀ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಬರೀ ಸೈಟ್ಗಳಾಗೋಗಿದೆ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಅಗ್ರಿಕಲ್ಚರಲ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ವ್ಯವಸಾಯ ಭೂಮಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸೈಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮನೆಗಿಂತ ಸೈಟ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಅನ್ಸಲ್ವಾ ಅವಲ್ ಒಂದು ಸೈಟ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳೋಣ ಅಂತ ಮನೆ ಕಡೆ?
ನಮ್ಗೆ ಅಷ್ಟು ಹಣ ಬೇಕಲ್ಲ,
ಅಷ್ಟು ಹಣನೂ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ. ಬಟ್ ಆದ್ರೂ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಕೆಲಸದ ಅವಕಾಶ ಇದೆ, ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಓದುವ ಅವಕಾಶ ಇದೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತೀರಾ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ದೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ಅ ಸಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ intransigency of movement because you're locked into your job, your site, and there's a locational standing that you have. But you do notice in Bangalore, what you would call Greater Bangalore, many of our leaders have made their money from real estate, and real estate is king in this city. And the whole of the agricultural landscape all the way till Nandi Hills are only sites, right? Revenue sites. How is that to be absorbed into the system and deliver low-income housing?
Here's the thing, like all over the world, just because you own a parcel of land doesn't mean you have the right to construct on it.
Correct.
In fact, that is true even in India in many ways. Right. If you go, for example, these coastal zone regulations, you're aware of that. Just because you own property along the ocean doesn't mean you can just build on that. Or we have these buffer zones along the lakes. owning property is not enough of a right to build, right? So, but typically the thresholds are very low, that anyone else who has any site anywhere can go to the appropriate development authority and say, ನನಗೊಂದು ಮನೆ ಕಟ್ಟಬೇಕು, approve ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಡಿ, ಕಟ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ. That's all it is, kind of thing. What I would say is it has reached a point where there is no simple solution. Let's first accept that there is no simple solution. Second, there is never going to be a solution as long as you don't stop doing what you have always done. I'm saying today the government is telling you that your construction is illegal and here's how to regularize it. I'm saying the planning law should include a way of saying the failure to provide adequate supply of housing is also illegal.
Exactly. So which is the institution of governance who now bears the burden of delivering affordable housing to the city?
So far it has been BDA.
Exactly.
But now it is GBA in the 712 kilometers. It's their job. Instead of tarring the road and, checking for plastic use and all that, that's what they should be doing.
Yes. So now, is there a window of opportunity with the GBA to democratize the process of access to sites, to land, and to adequate, decent housing? And is there a need for the GBA itself to imagine itself bigger than the 750 square kilometers it has? Because the periphery is where the pressure is the most right now in the city, as you were pointing out, in the north and the east. And should we look at a greater Bangalore right now so that affordable housing is available?
GBA, if it really sort of thinks that there should be something to show for having created itself, I would say let the individual corporations do the most that they can on their own without trying to enforce uniformity across all of them.
Correct.
This is the only thing that actually GBA can do. You can take some kind of technical and managerial approach to this. More space, better infrastructure, better design, you can do that. It's not an impossible thing. If your plan, your techno-managerial plan, if it does not speak to the society and to the politics, there's no game.
Correct.
That I would say, for example, it's much simpler to say, why outside the city? What is wrong in her saying that in my ward, 10-15% of the land should be for low-income housing only? What is so difficult about that?
Absolutely.
Right. I'm saying the government has 18,000 crores to build a tunnel that nobody wants, right? Fine, buy enough land in the city and so that the poor can be housed.
Increase densification by
Actually, this is a very good point. It's one of the ironies of India. That the poor live in low-density housing and the rich are starting to live in high-density housing, right? It's bizarre. I'm not saying force the poor to go into high density kind of thing. So the land availability is not the problem.
The focus on infrastructure for the poor and vulnerable has to be higher, perhaps, in terms of the effort that the state has to put in, so that they're better able to cope with the challenges, as opposed to the rich. Just as an example, the rich person can do rainwater harvesting and supplement his or her water needs. She can't do it because she has a limited house, right? So in terms of the policy directions that we need, infrastructure itself has to talk to the poor more.
BWSSB. It's a very simple thing. You are a water supply company, not a pipe supply company, right? One time I asked the BWSSB chairman, this was so many years ago. He said, there is no piped connection to your house. I said, that is none of your concern. You are supposed to supply water. There is a guy. He illegally extracts water from the ground,
Right.
transports it in full public view of all the authorities, including the police and the municipality. And he delivers water reasonably regularly to lots of people around the city.
Private water tanker.
Are you telling me that he is capable of doing something that the state is not capable of doing?
There is a need for universal connection and institutions to live up to that universal connection and universal delivery of water.
Your assumption is in this house, three people will live. In this house, 17 people will live. Whatever, some building, you make an assumption. But because you have an inadequate supply of dwelling units, the actual use in a lot of places where poor people live is not anywhere near the capacity of that pipe to carry or serve.
Correct. So it's a question of design, and the better design should be better informed by the population which occupies the space, and you should design for that population which is there. ಅಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ಮಾತು ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದು ಒಂದು ಬಡವರು ಮನೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಮನೆ ಬೇಕಾದಾಗ ಅದು ಒಂದೇ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಶೆಕೆ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಮಳೆ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂದಾಗ ನಿಮಗೆ ಅನ್ಸಲ್ವಾ ಒಂದು ತಾರಸಿ ಮನೆ ಇದ್ರೆ, ನೀವು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರಿ, ತಾರಸಿ ಮನೆ ಇದ್ರೆ ಪ್ಲಾಸ್ಟಿಕ್ ಮನೆ, ಶೀಟ್ ಮನೆಗಿಂತ ವಾಸಿ ಅಲ್ವಾ?
ವಾಸಿ. ಇವಾಗ ಸೀಟ್ ಮನೆ ಇದ್ರೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಬಿಸಿಲು ಬಂದ್ರೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಸೆಕೆ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಅದೇ ಒಂದು ಮೋಲ್ಡ್ ಮನೆ ಇದ್ರೆ ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಮಳೆ ಬಂದ್ರು ಏನ್ ಬಂದ್ರು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಆರಾಮಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಮೋಲ್ಡ್ ಮನೆ ಇದ್ರೆ
ಅದು ಗಾಳಿಗೆ
ಫ್ಯಾನು ಅದು ಇದು ಹಾಕೊಂಡ್ರು ಇಲ್ಲ ಜನ್ನಲ್ ಯಾವ್ದನ್ನ ಹಾಕಿದ್ರೆ ಗಾಳಿ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಇವಾಗ ಈ ಮನೆ ಇದ್ರೆ ಮೋರಿ ನೀರುನು ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ ಕೆಳಗಡೆಯಿಂದ, ಮೇಲೆಂದು ನೀರು ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, ಸೆಕೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಇದಕ್ಕನ್ನ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಅದು ಒಂದು ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಮನೆ.
ಎಲ್ಲ ಈ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಇದನ್ನ ಕೇಳೋರು ಯಾರು ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ?
BBMP ಅವರೇ ಬಂದ್ ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಮಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ ಯಾರು ಅವರು ಟೈಮ್ ಫ್ರೀಯಾಗಿ ಇರುವಾಗ ಬಂದು ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದು ನಮ್ಮ ತರ ಇರೋರು ವೇಸ್ಟ್ ಆಯೋರು ಹೋಗೋದ್ರೆ ಈ ತರ ತುಂಬಿಟ್ಟೈತೆ. ಇವಾಗ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಿಲಮ್ ಐತೆ, ಸಿಲಮಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ನಡಿಯೋಕೆ ಜಾಗ ಇರಲ್ಲ. ಇದು ವೇಸ್ಟೇ ಬಂದು ಕಚರಾನು ವೇಸ್ಟು ಎರಡು ಹಿಂಗ್ ಗೊಬ್ಬರ ತರ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಹೋಗೋದು ಇಷ್ಟೇ ದಾರಿ. ಸಿಲಮಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋದು ಮನೆ 10ಕ್ಕೆ 10, 5ಕ್ಕೆ 5 ಇಂತೆ ಮನೆ ಇರೋದು. ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲೇ 1,000 ಬೇರೆ ಕಡೆ 1000 ಮನೆ ಇರೋದು 2 ಬಂಗ್ಲಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, 3 ಬಂಗ್ಲಾ ಮಿನಿಮಮ್ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೇಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಏರಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ 1,500 ಮನೆ, 2,000 ಮನೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಮನೆ 10ಕ್ಕೆ 10, 5ಕ್ಕೆ 5 ಈ ತರ ಮನೆ ನಮ್ದಲ್ಲ.
So this is the point of intermediation and the lack of participative governance where there's a forum for listening, which is the point that you always make.
It actually, as a problem, it exists even for well-off people. If you're in a single family home, you're toast. Correct. It's only by living in a community that you're able to do two things: build solutions at some scale and economic viability, and second, exert political pressure at some scale and viability.
The localized democracy still remains one of the most powerful weapons of at least listening to the genuine grievances of people and the political representatives.
Correct. Yeah. These exercises in engaging more with the system, more accessible cooperation, getting this guy to do that and that guy to do that, we have to stop seeing those as purely technical and managerial.
This is political.
It is political and social. And social.
So that's the whole point of it.
In some sense, therefore, that battle is only going to be one socially and politically. It's not going to be one technically and managerial.
That's famous last words. Absolutely. It's a political social problem. And so, thank you. ಬಂದಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅನುಭವ ಹಂಚಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ, and for the demystification of, not demystification, at least the delineation of the complexity of the problem. The challenge for metropolises like Bangalore, especially in the era of climate change, global warming, or urban heat islands, or just urbanization itself, is the socio-political character of the problem and the inability of the system to deal with it except as a techno-managerial solution at best, which ignores the most vulnerable and the most poor. Hopefully, with the creation of the Greater Bangalore Authority and the construction of 5 corporations, perhaps we have now the window of opportunity to open it up to political representation at ward level, ward sabha places where, as we discussed previously, Schedule 12th of the Constitution, the 18 rules and parameters will be dealt with more adequately. We hope for an optimistic solution, but the challenge is wicked and complex. Vishwanath for Climate Charche podcast.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು, ಹೇಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಆರಾಮಾ? ಒಂದು ಕಾಫಿ ಅಣ್ಣ. ಏನ್ ಸಮಾಚಾರ?